The Bahá'í Calendar, also called the Badí Calendar, meaning wondrous or unique, is a solar calendar composed of 19 months of 19 days each, plus an extra period of 4 or 5 intercalary days known as a Yamiha. The Bahá'í year begins on the day of the vernal equinox in Tehran, Iran, which usually falls around March 20th or March 21st. The inception of the Bahá'í Calendar was on the 21st of March, 1844, the year during which the Bab declared his mission and the Bahá'í Faith began. Years are counted with the date notation of BE, Bahá'í Era. The year 181 BE will begin on the 20th of March, 2024, but because the Bahá'í Day begins and ends at sunset, this will be celebrated from sunset on March 19th.
Thank you. So today our speaker is Dr. Courosh Mehanian, and his topic is the Badí Calendar. Dr. Mehanian is a principal research scientist at the Gates Foundation, where he harnesses artificial intelligence technology to address healthcare challenges in low and middle income countries. He's worked towards improving outcomes in malaria, cervical cancer, childhood pneumonia, and obstetric care. Dr. Mehanian holds a BA in physics from the University of Pennsylvania and a PhD in physics from Cornell University. So with that, I'll hand it off to Dr. Mehanian.
Hello, everyone. It's very nice of you to join this meeting. I'm going to talk about the Badí calendar, but maybe I don't need to. Bita already explained it all in her introduction. So are we done? Just kidding. So as many of you know, the Baha'i Faith is a world religion that started in 1844. The twin founders of the Baha'i Faith are the Bab and Baha'u'llah. And the names of the Bab and Baha'u'llah are intricately intertwined in the concept of the Badí calendar, which we will be explaining further ahead. The Baha'i Faith is a religion that teaches the oneness of God, the oneness of all religions, and the oneness of humankind, a concept that the world could really need today because of all the disunity that we see around us. One of the central principles of the Baha'i Faith is the unity of science and religion. And throughout this talk, I'm going to be demonstrating that unity between science and religion, because I'm going to talk a lot about the science of calendars. But then I'm also going to tie this to spiritual concepts and the spiritual meanings. So you will see in the talk today the intertwining of these two, science and religion, seamlessly. They're intimately connected, and there really is no separation between them. So I hope to demonstrate that to you in the talk. So I'm going to share a set of slides, and I'll start my talk with the slides. All right. So here are the top talk about the significance of calendars. What are they? How do they work? The science of the calendars. And we're going to talk about the history of calendars and the different types of calendars in the world. And then we're going to talk mostly about the Badí calendar and what it means, how it's defined, and its spiritual significances, and how it's unique in the world. Okay, so here we go. Calendars are really, they express the human desire to know and to understand. That's really one of the essential qualities of what it means to be human, is we want to know. We want to understand. We're not content with just, making a living and just, subsisting. We want to understand how things work. And the calendar orients us in time. Just like, we make maps of our Earth. We make maps of places so we know how to get around. A calendar is kind of like a map in time. And it helps us to feel a little bit less out of control, even though there still are elements of life that are not within our control. So with the advent of agriculture about 10,000 years ago, calendars became absolutely essential. Without a calendar, we wouldn't have been able to succeed in growing crops, knowing when to plant, knowing when to harvest, and that's really kind of the foundation of our physical existence, is agriculture. And agriculture and calendars go hand in hand. In order to maintain a calendar, you need some kind of a timekeeper. one can think of celestial objects as timekeepers that are given to us by nature. Many calendars are based on the sun, and just the seasons themselves tell us what time of year it is. The difficulty with that is that you don't know when they're approaching, and there's variability in the seasons, in the weather. So it's not a very reliable, if it's the only thing you have, it's not a reliable indicator of time. So people turn to the moon, which has this regular 29.5-day cycle. So you can predict things very well in terms of the moon. In fact, the words moon and month are related, and in many languages they're essentially the same word. And there's roughly 12 lunar cycles per year, but that's not an exact number, as we shall see. So the calendar is a little bit difficult because nothing really lines up. The year is not a whole number of days. It's 365.242190. That number is actually changing because of many different things that are happening. The number of planets that are in our solar system means that number is actually changing because it's a many body problem, which is very difficult to predict from a physics point of view. And then the year is not a whole number of lunar months, 12.368 something. And then the lunar month is not a whole number of days. So if you base a calendar on one of these things, like a number of days or the number of months, it's not going to really line up. So you have to be a little bit more subtle about how you design a calendar. So let's see how that went. So there are different types of lunar calendars. There's the Islamic lunar calendar. The ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans had lunar calendars. There's approximately 29.5 days per month. If you say that there's 12 months in a year, that's 354 days in a year. Well, we know that the year is 365 days, 365.25 approximately. So if you base your year on lunar months, then your calendar is going to be drifting relative to the actual solar year by 11 days per year. And this is why you see in the Islamic calendar, the month of fasting, Ramadan, changes from time of year. Every year it falls back by 11 days. And so it's kind of drifting throughout the calendar. Then there are these calendars that are lunisolar calendars. The Babylonian, the Hebrew, the Athenian, the Chinese, the Hindu, and the Thai. These are based on the moon, but they make some attempt to synchronize the seasons by adding leap months on occasions. The formulas that they use to add these leap months are quite complicated. I won't go through those formulas because it's it really is kind of not relevant to what we're trying to discuss today. But nevertheless, it's an attempt to try to synchronize the lunar cycle with the actual solar cycle. And then there are calendars that are based on the sun itself: the Egyptian, the Mayan, the Persian, the Zoroastrian, the Roman, the Coptic, and of course the Bahá'í calendar. So we're going to talk mainly about these calendars because this is really where the Badí calendar comes from. It's a solar calendar. Okay, so let's just try to understand what do things look like. As we all know, the Earth orbits the sun. The plane of that orbit is called the ecliptic plane. The Earth is itself rotating. This is what causes us to have day and night. The Earth rotates on the axis, and the axis of the Earth is tilted relative to the ecliptic plane. It's not straight up and down, perpendicular to the ecliptic plane. It's at an angle of 23.5 degrees to the ecliptic plane. So this is what causes seasons, and it also introduces some other interesting things which we'll talk about. So we've all heard about the spring equinox. The spring equinox is defined when the sun crosses the equatorial plane. Imagine there's a plane that goes through the equator of the Earth. It's a plane that extends to infinity. I'm just showing you as a square because it's kind of hard to show it otherwise. But this plane extends to infinity. There are 2 times of the year when the sun actually crosses that the equatorial plane. it happens in the spring, roughly March 20, 21st, and then it also happens in the fall, in September 20th or 21st. During the spring, it crosses the plane from south to north, because as you can see in this image, the sun is on the bottom side of the earth, so to speak, and then when the earth goes that way, it crosses it goes from the southern hemisphere to the northern hemisphere in the spring, and the sun stays in the northern hemisphere until the fall equinox, and then it goes to the southern hemisphere. Okay, so this is what we mean by spring equinox and fall equinox. And these are two significant astronomical events that one could tie a calendar to. And indeed, many of the solar calendars did tie the beginning of the year to the spring equinox, because it's something that has a real physical significance, as opposed to January 1st, which really doesn't have any physical significance at all. It's just some time right over here sometime. Okay, so a couple other concepts. Because the axis of the Earth is tilted relative to the ecliptic plane, the North Pole is basically pointed towards a particular star at any point. And another thing happens is that the Earth, because the Earth is spinning, it's really like a top. The Earth is a spinning top, and because also the Earth is not perfectly spherical, that spinning top precesses. It basically wobbles. I don't know. I've left the link here on the page here. You can see this link. If you go to this YouTube video, you'll see an explanation of the tilt of the Earth and how it causes that wobble. So the period of that wobble is 26,000 years. That means that the Earth, not only is it spinning on its axis and going around the sun, but it's also wobbling as it goes around, as it spins around the sun. That wobble causes the orientation of the axis of the Earth to change in a regular way every 26,000 years. So in fact, even though the North Pole is pointing towards they say it's the star Polaris, in 10,000 years, it won't be pointing at that star at all. It'll be pointing somewhere else. And another thing that happens is that, the timing of the vernal equinox is set to where the sun aligns with the constellation Aries. Well, that was in 1000 BC that the vernal equinox aligned with the constellation Aries. It no longer aligns with Aries. It's actually shifting. And then maybe in 10,000 years, it's going to go back and point towards Aries, but that's constantly shifting. So the sidereal year is the time for the Earth to go around the sun with respect to the fixed stars. The stars also are not fixed, by the way; they're also moving. But on the time frame that of human civilizations, the stars are fixed. So if you consider the revolution of the Earth around the sun and measure with respect to the fixed stars, that's called the sidereal year. But because the axis of the Earth is wobbling, the wobble causes the Earth to move slightly, and the tropical year, which is really what counts for the seasons, is 20 minutes shorter than the sidereal year, or the sidereal year is 20 minutes longer than the tropical year. So what we're really interested in is this tropical year. This is the thing that determines the seasons, where the sun is pointed on Earth. So here's a diagram of what I was saying. This red axis here represents time, and 0 represents 0 AD, the start of the Christian era. You can see that at around 1000 BC was when the sun was pointing towards Aries at the vernal equinox. Today we're at like 2000, so it's no longer pointing towards Aries. It's it's actually past Pisces, or somewhere towards the end of the constellation Pisces. So we're going to encounter this in a little bit. Just something to keep in mind. Okay, so solar calendars. The Mayans had a solar calendar. They had two different types of years. They had a 260-day years, which consisted of 13 months of 20 days each. And then I'm not even going to try to pronounce these names. Then there was another one, which was 365 days. It consisted of 18 months times 20 days plus 5 unlucky days. You can see this is already sort of kind of approaching the Baha'i calendar. You know, they did 18 by 20. The Baha'i calendar is 19 by 19. And we'll see that in a little while. Of course, this calendar won't keep very good time because it's off by a quarter of a day. And so it'll drift over the years. So the Julian calendar, supposedly this calendar was established by Julius Caesar in 45 BC. The previous to this, their calendar only had 10 months. They added 2 more months, and then they made it to be 365 days. But every 4 years, they would add 1 day to the month February to make it 365.25. Well, that's good. It's a little bit better, but it's still not accurate enough. You know, in order to be precise, you would have to be, you know, much more accurate than that. So by 1582, the vernal equinoxes, rather than occurring actually at spring, it was occurring, you know, on March 11th. So the Julian calendar was actually drifting relative to the actual seasons. So in 1582, Pope Gregory said, okay, well, we need to fix this. And so he adopted a different formula. Rather than adding one, you know, a leap year every 4th year, they do add a leap year every 4th year, but every 100 years, they don't add a leap year. But then every 400 years, they do add a leap year. So it's kind of a complicated formula, but it means the length of the year by formula is going to be 365.2425, which you can see is a little bit closer to the number that I showed you at the beginning of the presentation, but it's still not exact. By 3000 AD, the Gregorian calendar will be 1 day off, and by 12,000 AD, it'll be 3 days off. Okay, so those are not accurate calendars, and you know, I submit that they're not accurate because they're based on a formula, because they are trying to impose something on nature, you know, impose a formula on nature, and nature doesn't. This formula is too simple to encompass nature. Okay, now let's look at the Persian calendar. And really the Persian calendar is sort of based on, the Badí calendar is sort of based on the Persian calendar. It was developed by Omar Khayyam, who was a mystic, a poet, a scientist. In 1079 AD, he decided to base the determination of the new year on the actual vernal equinox by astronomical observation. He set up some of the first astronomical observatories in the world, and you could actually observe the vernal equinox. And he said this is when the year is going to start. In 1925, the Persians decided to reform this calendar. The length of the days kind of were a little bit not very even. They decided to make the lengths of the month more uniform, and that happened in 1925. Now, this kind of calendar, because it's based on astronomical observation, it'll never drift relative to the solar year. It will always be accurate. So in a way, this calendar really reflects nature. It reflects what nature wants us to do, to observe the year when it actually starts, when the vernal equinox occurs. So the Badí calendar is similar to that. It's based on the vernal equinox, but the system of months is different. And this is like where the spiritual aspect of this calendar comes in, and we're going to be talking about that. In order to make the calendar, so there's 19 days, as Bita said at the beginning, there's 19 days of 19 months, that makes 361. And then there are these intercalary days, or Ayyam-ha, which are inserted before the last month of the year. There's going to be either 4 or 5 of them, and those don't synchronize with the Gregorian calendar. The Gregorian calendar uses this formula, you know, every 4 years you add a leap year, except for every 100 you don't, and then every 400 you do. This is going to be based purely on observation. The intercalary days are added to the calendar so that the equinox falls, the first of the year falls right on the vernal equinox. Okay, so this is going to be the beginning of the Badí calendar, when the sun crosses the equatorial plane from south to north here. Okay, and as I indicated before, January 1st is like this arbitrary point on the solar system, whereas the vernal equinox is actually something that really astronomically occurs. Okay. So what about the New Year? When did people celebrate the New Year? In Mesopotamia, they celebrated it at the vernal equinox. The Romans celebrated it on March 1st. The Gregorian calendar celebrates it on January 1st. Believe it or not, the British didn't adopt the Gregorian calendar until 1752, and they celebrated the New Year on March 25th. And then they switched to the Gregorian calendar and they started celebrating it on January 1st. The Chinese calendar is adjusted to be, the New Year occurs around spring. I guess it must have been in southern China where the spring comes very early. And the Islamic calendar celebrates according to the lunar calendar, which, as we said, it drifts by 11 days every year. Okay, so the Bab introduced the Badí calendar, and he said this about it. The Lord of the universe hath fashioned all types of years by his behest, and hath ordained that each year should equal the numerical value of the word all things, kull shay, 19 times 19 equals 361, to consist of 19 months, where each month equaleth 19 days, that from the moment of the rising of the sun in the vernal equinox, corresponding to the first sign of the zodiac, the sign of Aries, till the end of its voyage at the end of the winter, corresponding to the last sign of the zodiac, the sign of Pisces, all beings may traverse through all 19 stages of the letters of unity. The first month resembleth the sun, while all other months resemble mirrors which reflecteth the radiant lights of that supreme month, in such wise that naught is seen in them but that month. God hath called that month the month of Baha, splendor, glory, meaning that therein lieth the splendor and glory of all months, and he hath singled it out for him whom God shall make manifest. You can see in this passage from the writings of the Bab that he very definitely indicates that the first month of the calendar is associated with him whom God shall make manifest, which is his successor. And in fact, the last month of the Badí calendar is called Allah, which means loftiness, and that name is associated with the name of the Bab. That is really one of the titles of the Bab, the lofty one. And so you can see that the Bab precedes Baha in the Badí calendar. You can also see this allusion to the signs of the zodiac, Aries being associated with the vernal equinox. As we said, that isn't actually true anymore, that it was a long time ago, but because of the precession of the earth, it has shifted around the year. It's more in the constellation Pisces now. So the Badí calendar was established by the Bab, and the names of the month, he chose them from a prayer by the fifth Imam, the Imam Muhammad Baqir, the fifth Imam. It's a prayer for the month of Ramadan, and in this prayer there are these attributes of God. And the Bab chose the names of the months of his calendar from those attributes of God. Of course, we know there are many, many more attributes of God, but he chose those particular ones to name the names of the month. And then he declared Nowruz, the vernal equinox, to be the beginning of the new year. And then he also appointed the day of his declaration as a holy day. Baha'u'llah confirmed this calendar, the Badí calendar that the Bab declared and established. And then he clarified some things. First of all, the intercalary days, the Bab had not specified when the intercalary days should be inserted. Baha'u'llah indicated that those days should be inserted before the month of Allah, before the month of fasting. And then he added five more holy days: the 1st of Ridwan, the 9th of Ridwan, the 12th of Ridwan, and his birthday and the birthday of the Bab as holy days. Abdu'l-Baha added 3 more holy days, the martyrdom of the Bab and the ascension of Baha'u'llah, and then the Day of the Covenant. Shoghi Effendi added another day to the calendar, the ascension of Abdu'l-Baha. These 2 holy days are not days where we suspend work. On all the other holy days of the year, the Baha'is suspend work. Here are the names of the months. All of the names of the months are based on attributes of God. In the past, people would name the names of the months in terms of, either, gods, idols, sometimes just, spirits, things like that. The Bab said that the names of the months should be based on the attributes of God. So he kind of basically lifted them from a realm of imagination to the realm of the reality of God. In fact, the significance of Ayyam Ha, the reason why this is called Ha is because the letter Ha is associated with the essence of God. The numeric value of the letter Ha in Arabic, the abjad value is 5. And these days are associated with the essence of God. And the Baha'is celebrate these days as days of joy, gift-giving, and charity. And this is the activities that the Baha'is engage in during these months before the month of the fast. And then after the month of the fast, they celebrate the new year, Nowruz. So here's a little bit a translation by Nader Saidi about the names of the months. For the divine cycle advanceth in stages until such revelation when all things will be called by the names of God, such that no name will be assigned to anything unless it resembleth one of the names of God. Glorified and exalted is he. This will occur gradually and in stages until all heaven, earth, and that which lieth between them will be filled with the names of God. Well is it with the people of that age who call nothing but by a name of God. That age is worthy to be praised as the beginning of the worlds of paradise. So let's try to understand what the Bab is saying here. He's saying that in the future, when the kingdom of God is established on earth, everything is going to be related to an attribute of God, one of the names of God. So in a sense, the Badí calendar is sort of an indication of what the future world is going to look like. It's a calendar where all the months are named after attributes of God. And the Bab is saying that everything will be named upon the attributes of God and the names of God. Of course, we are not there yet. We are a long way away from having a civilization which is at a level where we sort of think about God and see God in everything. But this is a gradual process that the human civilization will attain to, where we see God in everything and everything will be named after a name of God. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Nowruz. How do we determine when Nowruz is? Because we know that the moment of the vernal equinox is one precise moment, and it occurs at the same moment for everywhere on Earth. If you look at the Gregorian calendar, the time of the new year, which is midnight, it occurs at a different time every place in the world. It happens in Tokyo at a different time from New York, from Tehran, from Paris, from Dakar, from Sydney, from Buenos Aires. Everywhere in the world, they celebrate the new year at a different time. Whereas the vernal equinox happens at the same instant in time for the entire world. This is something really new. The concept of that everywhere in the world will celebrate the beginning of the new year at exactly the same moment. This is kind of, it's a unifying principle. It's something that brings the world together because we know we're all going to be observing the equinox at exactly the same time. But there remains the idea, the necessity to determine what day is actually going to be the day of Nowruz. Baha'u'llah, the Universal House of Justice has decided that the day where the vernal equinox occurs in Tehran, that day is going to be the day of the new year, the day of Nowruz. So this year, the vernal equinox is going to occur at 12:31 p.m. Tehran time. That corresponds to March 20th. Let's say in Seattle, it's going to be 1 a.m. in Seattle on March 20th when the vernal equinox occurs. It's going to be 12:30 p.m. in Tehran, and it's going to be 6:01 p.m. in Tokyo. But because the vernal equinox occurs in Tehran on that day we're going to call Nowruz. And every year based on astronomical observations and tables that are constantly changing, because you can't predict the day of the vernal equinox too far in advance, maybe 100 years. They determine when that is going to occur, and the new year will be determined on the day where that occurs in Tehran. On that day, the sun is going to be over here. It's going to be, right on the equator. This is when the sun is crossing the equator, and it turns out that the moon is going to be over there somewhere in South America. Okay. I want to also talk about the twin birthdays. This is kind of a significant landmark. The two holy days, the birth of the Bab and the birth of Baha'u'llah, are celebrated on kind of a mixture of lunar and solar calendars, and I'll explain how that works. In the Eastern countries, in Iran and the Arabian countries, the birth of the Bab and the Baha'u'llah were always celebrated on the lunar calendar because they occur on the 1st of Muharram and the 2nd of Muharram. According to the Islamic calendar, it was the 1st of Muharram 1235 and the 2nd of Muharram 1233 when those births occurred. And that corresponds to the 20th of October 1819 and the 12th of November 1817. As you can see, according to the solar calendar, these two are not right next to each other, but in the lunar calendar, they were right next to each other. Okay, so just to draw it for you physically, here's the birth of Baha'u'llah on the 12th of November 1817, and here's the birth of the Bab on the 20th of October 1819. But in the lunar calendar, because the lunar calendar is shorter, these occurred on the same day. Fast forwarding to, okay, I'll just fast forward that to more like where we are today. The House of Justice decided that the twin birthdays of the Bab and Baha'u'llah, these two days are accounted as one in the sight of God, according to Baha'u'llah. And so it's appropriate that we should celebrate them on back-to-back days. But how do we reconcile that with the solar calendar? Well, the House of Justice decided that we are going to celebrate the twin holy days on the first and second day following new moon after Nowruz. This is a way of reconciling the spiritual significance of these twin holy days as being the same day, and the practical need to celebrate them at basically roughly the same time of year in the calendar. And since 2015, the East and the Western Baha'is have been celebrating these twin holy days exactly at the same time, based on this kind of lunisolar arrangement, which recognizes the spiritual significance of these twin holy days, but also recognizes the practical necessity for keeping them at roughly the same time of year. The other holy days are adjusted according to the Badí calendar. Now, in America, I know we're kind of used to thinking of, the Feast of Baha falls on the 21st of March, and then the Feast of Rizvan falls on the 20th of April. But those are relative to the Gregorian calendar. And I know we've been using the Gregorian calendar for so long, we think of it as fixed. But if you really think about it very carefully, the equinox falls on either the 19th, the 20th, or the 21st of March. And we think of the vernal equinox as drifting from the 19th to the 20th to the 21st. But I think that thinking is wrong. The vernal equinox is the is the definition. That's the framework. It's the Gregorian calendar which is drifting, not the equinox. The equinox is tied to the motion of the earth around the sun. It is fixed. That is the reference, not the Gregorian calendar. The Gregorian calendar is a human approximation which is imperfect, and it drifts back and forth. So rather, in my own terminology, I don't say Nowruz falls on the 19th or the 20th of March. I say the 20th of March falls on the vernal equinox, or on Nowruz. It's really the other way around. I'm sort of suggesting that we kind of reverse the mentality. It's like, when you're in a train and you think the train is still and the subway station is moving. Well, really it's not. It's the train that's moving. And I'm asking us to recognize that this Gregorian calendar that we're so used to is actually the thing that's wobbling, and the Nowruz is the one that's steady. In the future, the Baha'i holy days will be based on the Badí calendar. So they will be fixed days of the Baha'i month. The 1st of Baha for Nowruz, the 13th of Jalal for the first day of Rizvan, etc., etc. And again, as I said before, the birth of the Bab and the birth of Baha'u'llah are things that are going to drift a little bit, but they really roughly stay at the same time of year, sometime during Mashiat Ilm or Qudrat, usually in the fall in the northern hemisphere. Okay. Again, in 2014, the Universal House of Justice basically said the Badí calendar is no longer attached to the Gregorian calendar. It's independent. It's based on astronomical observation. And this is really kind of symbolic of the New World Order detaching from the Old World Order. That's how I see this phenomenon. We are ready to detach. We're ready to basically launch off and be the foundation for a new world civilization. The Badí calendar follows the rhythm of nature rather than trying to impose some kind of approximate formula on it. The new year corresponds to an astronomical event rather than some arbitrary human chosen time in the calendar. And the new year is synchronized across the entire planet. This is a symbol of the unity of the human race. The Universal House of Justice in 2014, when they established the adoption of the implementation of the Badí calendar, they said, the adoption of a new calendar in each dispensation is a symbol of the power of divine revelation to reshape human perception of material, social, and spiritual reality. Through it, sacred moments are distinguished, humanity's place in time and space reimagined, and the rhythm of life recast. Next Nowruz, New Year, will mark yet another historic step in the manifestation of the unity of the people of Baha'i and the unfoldment of Baha'u'llah's world order. That's it for my prepared talk, and I will entertain the questions now.
Thank you so much. It was really interesting. And yeah, I didn't know some of that stuff. So thank you. If anyone has questions, you can put it in the chat now, and that's how we'll get questions answered. The first question is, I'm wondering why you use the Christian-based BC and AD designations rather than the more inclusive current terms BCE and CE.
Just laziness. And by the way, on that topic, going forward, we will be, the Baha'is already, when we talk about a date, we're about to enter the year 181. It'll be called BE, Baha'i era, 181 BE. The Baha'i era began on 1 BE, March 1844. My own desire is that when the world adopts the Badí calendar, the years before the Baha'i era will have some kind of a name, but we won't skip the year 0. In the Gregorian calendar, they skip the year 0, which causes all kinds of mathematical problems. There is no year 0. 1 BC turns into 1 AD, or 1 BCE follows ACE. And so the year 0 has been left out. I hope that in the future we do adopt the year 0 the year before the beginning of the Baha'i era, so that all those mathematical difficulties go away.
Thank you. The next question is, what does Badí mean?
Badí means it indicates the start of a new thing. It's basically it's a new beginning. So Badí is really it's very appropriate name for this calendar because it's basically the calendar for a new world civilization, a new world order.
How does the Badí calendar reflect the concept of renewal and progressive revelation?
Well, humanity has gone through a lot of stages before we reach this point, and the calendars of the past were based on various things that were basically approximating reality. They were approximations of reality. I would say that the Badí calendar is a more accurate reflection of reality, but that reflection of accurate reality came gradually over time. What humanity didn't wake up in 10,000 years ago and say, oh, let's base the calendar on the vernal equinox, and we'll use all these scientific concepts to define it and adjust it. It's a process that we gradually came to over centuries and millennia of trying different things. So the Badí calendar represents the culmination of a lot of movements in history where we reached this stage where we now understand how we should organize our calendar. But that doesn't say that we're done, because we now have the Badí calendar, but we still don't know how we should reframe our lives in terms of it. I think that every Baha'i community probably goes through the struggle. I know all the Baha'i communities that I have been in. When do we celebrate feast? How do we reconcile the celebration of the feast with the practical need to like go to work and come back home and make dinner and put the kids to bed? We don't have a solution to that yet, and the Badí calendar is going to help us to find the solution to that. It doesn't say that we've actually solved it. It says that we are on the path to that. When we find solutions to those problems, and we develop a rhythm of life which recognizes our spiritual needs, our needs to reflect, to meditate, to come together in worship and celebration, then the Badí calendar itself will also be refined. Our implementation of it and our adherence to it will gradually be refined. So that is also an aspect of progressive revelation. We have the calendar now. It's the gift that we've been given, but we don't yet know how to make it part of our lives such that our family life, our spiritual life, our work life, and our charitable life, all of them are seamlessly integrated, and they don't put stress on our existence. So that's something yet to come.
Thank you. The next question is, what are your thoughts about the names of the Badí months being attributes of God, specifically the month of questions? This person's asking who asks the questions and why.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I love that question. The attributes of God, it's really interesting that questions should be an attribute of God. And I kind of think of that as being, questions is a symbol of human curiosity. We are curious. We are curious creatures. We just want to know things. We're not content to just find out how to do something just for the sake of it. We want to know how it works. And so I think the attribute of God, questions, is a symbol of curiosity being an attribute of God. And by manifesting the attribute of curiosity and wanting to know, we are actually reflecting an attribute of God. So all of the names of the months, if we emulate those attributes, splendor, glory, loftiness, power, perfection. We are approaching God. We are perfecting ourselves and becoming more godlike, acquiring the attributes of God.
Thank you. Is there a concept of a day of rest? What might that concept be in terms of an attribute of God and its implications for how we observe it?
Yes, there will be a day of rest. The Baha'i week begins on Saturday and ends on Friday, and Baha'u'llah has indicated that Friday is the day of rest. And by the way, each of the days of the week have their own name, and those are also based on attributes of God. And it's actually even more interesting. The years have names. There are names of years, and there are a cycle of 19 years is called a Vahed, and each of the years in that cycle has its own name. And those names are also attributes of God, but they're not the same as the names of the month. And then every 19 years is called the Kull Shay, which means the sum of all things. And those cycles are 361 years long, and I believe each of those has a name as well. The days of the week, like I said, I think the rhythm of the week, the rhythm of how we live those weeks and how we recognize holy days, how we recognize feasts and celebrate feasts together is something that is yet to be determined. For one thing, this has a lot to do with how we organize our economy. Our economy right now is I would say it's kind of a, if I will, I'll kind of use the word physical economy. It's an economy that's geared towards accumulation of wealth, production. It's not an economy that's geared towards well-being. In fact, many people lose their well-being as a result of participating in the economy that we have. The economy of the future is going to be one that's geared towards human well-being, spiritual and physical. And so the quandaries that we have in terms of how do we organize our week, how do we organize our time, is all a result of our almost like a worship or like obsession with physical acquisition, physical things. When we spiritualize our civilization, work will become a pleasant and welcome addition to our lives, but we will not neglect our well-being, our spiritual and physical well-being. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
No, thank you. So someone asked, what was the name of the weekday for rest in Arabic and English?
Oh, I'm sorry. I have to look that up. I have it on this webpage. Let's see, the names of the week. Let me try to get that back. Here's the cycles of the year, the days of the week. Okay. Can I share this page too on my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, where'd he go? Okay, days of the week. Jalal, Jamal, Kamal, Fidal, Idal, Istijlal, Istiqlal. Istiqlal is Friday. It would be the day of rest. Jalal is Saturday. Jamal is Sunday, etc., etc. Here's the cycle of years. Aleph, Ba, Ab, Dal, Bab, Vav, Abjad, Abad, etc. And this web page, I'll put it in the chat. You can find it. Let's see, where's my chat? You can find the more explanation of some of those things that we were talking about.
Got it. Thank you. Is there a book specifically written to discuss each of the attributes of God named in the 19 months of the Baha'i calendar?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, so I won't venture a guess. I can look it up and provide it to you, Peymane, and then maybe you can share it with your audience.
Sounds good. Thank you. Are there any other questions?
By the way, I want to just apologize if I mispronounce some of these Arabic names. Even though I am Persian, I grew up in America and I have an American accent when I say Arabic and Persian words. Sorry about that.
Okay, I think that's all of our questions, but that was a really, really useful talk, especially on the first day of the fast. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure, and I hope to see some of you in future talks.
Sounds good. Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining. And to those of you who are fasting, happy first day of the fast. These talks again are every Saturday at noon Eastern time. So we'll see you back next week. And I've put the link to our mailing list if you're not already on it, and our YouTube channel where this video will be posted afterwards. And our speaker next week will be Dr. Haida Sabet, and she'll be talking about strengthening spiritual capacities in times of hardship. Thank you, everyone. Have a good week, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Okay, can everyone see this first slide?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, good.